Alright, today I'm going to be reviewing the Razor 3D from Tower Hobbies. Now this is a sport aerobatic and 3D capable airplane, and it comes in an almost ready to fly kit, so some assembly is required. Now as you can see, I've already put the Razor together, so before we dive into the airplane, let's see what comes in the box. Now, as I said earlier, the Razor comes as an almost ready to fly airplane, so some assembly is required, and you will need to supply your own motor and electronics to complete the build. And even though the building process is easy enough to follow for even the newer pilots, this plane was intended for the intermediate and advanced flyers, so please keep that in mind during the review, okay? Now let me show you what I did to complete the Razor. First, let's talk about the motor. Now you have the option to go glow or electric, and I decided to go electric with this build, so let's start there. I've installed a Rimfire .55 brushless outrunner motor, and connected to the motor I have an Electrifly Silver Series 60 amp ESC. Now to control this bad boy, you're going to need at least a 4-channel radio system, and I highly suggest using one that has dual rates and mixing capabilities. So that's why I'll be using my Futaba 8FG Super radio to control the airplane, and in the airplane itself I have a 7-channel Futaba receiver. To complement your Electrifly Silver Series 60 amp ESC, you also need to add a battery pack to supply power to your receiver and servos in the airplane. And another feature that I added to my plane, which isn't necessary but is also a neat feature to have, is a switch harness between the battery pack and the receiver. The muscle power behind the 60 amp ESC and Rimfire brushless outrunner motor will be two Flite powered 3-cell 11.1 volt 3350 milliamp hour lithium polymer batteries with a 30C discharge rate and up to a 60C burst rate, which should give plenty of power to this airplane for those sport aerobatic maneuvers. For the control surfaces on the airplane, you will need to install 4 servos, one for each aileron, one for the elevator, and one for the rudder. And I've installed the Tower Hobbies TS160 metal geared high torque servos. To connect the aileron servos to the receiver, you will need 2 12-inch servo extension harnesses, and for the elevator and the rudder you will need 2 24-inch servo extension harnesses. Okay, let's wrap up this first part of the review for the Razor 3D, talk about the plane itself and some of the highlights, and then we'll take this bad boy on out to the flying field and see what it'll do. Now the plane itself is built up of balsa and ply construction, and it has a top flight MonoKote covering on it, so there's no painting necessary. And as you can tell, it has a really vivid color scheme on it. The body's white and you have shades of blue and red striping on the wings, so it should be easy to see while it's in the air. Now the wingspan itself is 52 inches and the length on the plane is 54.5 inches. The flying weight on the plane is 5 to 5.5 pounds depending on your setup. Now let's talk a little bit more about the wing itself. The wing, like I said, is built up with balsa and ply construction with the top flight MonoKote covering, and it's in one piece. So it attaches quickly to the plane with just one nylon bolt. The final highlights on the airplane are the 2.5-inch blue spinner, and behind that we have a 14x7 prop, and behind that we have a molded fiberglass cowl. Now onto the landing gear itself, we have a sturdy landing gear up front, and you can see covering the wheels we have molded fiberglass wheel pants covering up the 2.2-inch foam rubber wheels, and those large rubber wheels are always a great option to have because it makes grass runways an option, and I like that feature. Now onto the back of the plane here, on the rudder we have a steerable tail wheel, so that makes taxiing the plane around while it's on the ground that much easier to do. One more thing to note about the airplane before we take it out to the flying field is to access the battery and the electronics in the plane, the canopy is held on by pegs and wood grooves. so it comes off quickly and easy to access the internals on the airplane. And that's about it for the first part of the review for the Razor 3D. Now let's take this bad boy on out to the flying field and give it a go.
Eric, this is the tower. You are clear for takeoff.
Okay, right now I'm trimming out the plane. Okay, all trimmed out, so let's get vertical and then into a spin. Okay, let's test the rolls out. Those rolls were pretty sharp on high rates, but let's try some 3D rate rolls and see how it handles. Not too bad. I'm really liking these 3D rates right now. Alright, let's try out a loop. I'm feeling pretty comfortable with the plane right now, so let's try an inverted flat spin. It's time to get inverted. Well, I'm having a lot of fun with the Razor 3D right now, and I'd like to try some more tricks, but I'm getting low on the batteries. So let's bring it on in for a landing, take it back to the shop, and let me break it on down for you. Thumbs up. The Razor 3D. That's a nice flying plane right there. Alright, that was the review and flight of the Tower Hobbies Razor 3D. And now let me give you my final thoughts about the airplane. First, let's talk about the flight characteristics of the Razor. Now the manual gives you 3 rate settings for the control surface throws, and that is low, high, and 3D. And since my Futaba 8FG Super radio system allows for as many as 5 rate settings, I decided to try all 3. Now these control surface throw settings come from the manufacturer, and they were designed to give you your best chances for your first successful flights. Now I really enjoyed the high and 3D rate settings, and I can tell I'm going to adjust them a little bit just for my own personal preferences. Now for the low rate settings, they weren't really for me. It made the plane a little bit too docile, and it's kind of like trying to tame a wild animal. You just don't do it. This plane's got a lot of potential, and for those seasoned pilots out there, the high and 3D rate settings is a good starting point. Now I can see where the low rate settings would be good for a pilot that just crossed over into the intermediate skill range, because it'll give you a good place to start off with and let you get accustomed to the airplane and not just throw you off into the deep end first. Alright, now let's talk about the power setup on the airplane. The Rimfire .55 brushless outrunner motor, along with the Electrifly 60 amp ESC, provided plenty of power to perform sport aerobatic maneuvers. And let's not forget about the muscle behind the powertrain here. The two Flite Power lithium polymer battery packs provided plenty of pep for my electric setup. And another great feature about the airplane kit itself is that Tower Hobbies supplies the accessories for you to put in the glow engine of your choice. So this truly rounds this plane out for both types of flyers. The build time for the Razor would be comparable to other ARF kits of this size. Now the only thing that was a little bit time consuming about the build itself was installing the CA hinges for the ailerons, elevator, and rudder control surfaces. It would have been nice if some of the control surfaces came pre-hinged, but other than that the build was straightforward and easy to follow. And on that note, we're going to wrap up this video review. Overall, I really did enjoy flying the Razor 3D, and I think you will too, so I'm going to give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to find out more information about this airplane, you can go get this plane at towerhobbies.com, and I'll be providing direct links to their website in my video notes for this airplane. So be sure to read my video notes and go check this plane out at towerhobbies.com, okay? Well, that's about it. As always, I'm glad you got to see me, and keep on flying.
I like the sound that made.
I'm stuck.
Is it vroom, 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 vroom?
Take two. Landing, take two.
Beep.
That's it.
You done playing?
The Razor 3D. Now, how you like it?
It's so big. Hey everybody, Candy here from Around 2 at RC. And today we're going to review the Razor 3D.
Ah, cut! Too much acting. Start over.
I like it. Can I have one?
No.
And today we're going to review the Razor 3D.
Ah, cut! Too much acting. Start over.